Have you ever felt your thoughts and opinions don't matter? Do you hesitate to take steps toward a better future or feel like others are controlling your life? It's time to break free from those limiting beliefs. Welcome to Change Your View, the podcast that empowers you to reclaim your mindset and your future. Join Hasina Shahid Jackson as we go beyond the surface, exploring life with spirit, hope, and faith. Learn to be bold and confident and create the life you truly desire. Now, here's your host, Hasina.
Well, hello, Alyssa.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here today on Change Your View. And I'm excited about the discussion that we're going to have today because you wrote a book, and it's actually part of a series, the Lionheart Chronicles. The Alchemy of the Beast is a book that's out now, and you're working on the second one. But you have such a fascinating story that I think it's wonderful to tell the story behind the story, because we read the books, but we really never know what was the author thinking, what was the catalyst that made them write this book. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's just dive right in. So what moment or experience made you realize that you needed to write this book?
That's a great question. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk about this because I'm in the thick of writing the second book, and it's always reflective when you sort of remember back to the first experience writing it raw. So the catalyst for this first book was the moment I lost my dad. So I lost my dad in January of 2017, and it was unexpected, and my first experience with death at 21 years old. And I had recently left the sort of belief system that I had grown up in. And so I was like ground zero, no coping mechanisms, no idea how to deal with this giant thing that just rocked my world. I was his caretaker. I was his best friend. I was on his hip for my entire life. So it was an extremely traumatic experience for me. And I was not dealing well. I was not coping with it well. And I had a book land on my doorstep by Dan Millman, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And I was thinking, why the heck did my sister send this to me? Because it was written by an Olympic gymnast. Like, what does this guy have anything to do with my life? And it was so transformative. I consumed that thing. I devoured it in like 3 days. I had the rest of his books on my doorstep, and I bought a ticket to his retreat in Costa Rica in the next few months that were following. So then I went to this retreat, my first time out of country, my whole family looking at me like, you're not in the great state to be traveling alone to a country where you don't speak the language, and where are you going? And so I was going into kind of the middle of the jungle for an experience that I didn't really anticipate. Like I didn't know what I was signing up for. I just knew that it was my right next step. And I showed up, and I ended up having this week of incredible synchronistic. It was like a series of synchronistic experiences that just catalyzed the next phase of my healing. And when I came home, I said to my sister, who was not the right person to say this to because she had built a career for 20 years helping people write books and heal their own stories and messages. And I was like, I could write a whole book on that entire week. And then she ended up helping me map out a whole series from that experience. So that experience is the first book. And so the whole series follows Scarlett Leonelli, this second generation Russian Italian immigrant, through the tragedies that life throws her way. And she sort of travels to different countries and has these types of experiences that help catalyze her healing and teach her the next law of the universe that she needs to heal through and alchemize those tragedies.
It's interesting that you say that because, and you kind of referenced it a little bit when I asked about what was the catalyst. You said that all these emotions and feelings surface. So what emotions and feelings surfaced as you went on this experience that you had to deal with? Describe some of what you felt and what was going through your mind.
Well, I think primarily the thing that gripped me was the idea around meaning. After he passed, in the weeks and months that followed, right before he passed, I had published a book my first book I had ever. It was a poetry compilation. I had started a business. I had just started college. Like I was opening all these doors to the rest of my life that I was getting really excited about building. And all of a sudden, the like pillar of my world and my foundation died. And I was trying to reason with it. And I was sitting behind my desk every day wondering what the heck any of this meant. And why am I sitting here doing all these meaningless things? It was like this wrestle with purpose that showed up, and everything just seemed so meaningless to me. And it propelled me into this meaning seeking journey of, well, what the heck does our everyday mean? And how do we create that sort of fulfilled, that meaning driven fulfillment in our lives?
So this experience that you had in Costa Rica helped you find the answers to those questions. It seems what I'm hearing on what meaning or no, yes.
I don't know that those are answers that we can just find like treasure, like treasure hunting. I think those are kind of ever evolving questions in our life as we go through the phases of life and the different seasons of life, and we find meaning in different places, and we learn how to create meaning on our own. The experiences that happened in Costa Rica were more like they helped mend the details, right? Because grief is never simple. It's never, oh, I lost this person and I am sad. Like there are so many different dynamics. Grief is a very complex thing. And especially, when it's in relationship with people we had complex relationships with. There's just, you're grieving so many different things. You're grieving that person's life. You're grieving who they were to you. You're grieving the future you thought you had with them. You're grieving all the things around you that have to change in your everyday lives because that person's gone. So there's all these different elements that we don't anticipate. I wasn't prepared for. I'd never dealt with them before. And that's not even talking about like the specific relationship that you had with that person for however many years, And so all these things happened in Costa Rica that kind of gave me the opportunity to dive deeper into these things, and especially in relationship with myself, because I didn't know who I was anymore without this person who was my defender and my warrior my entire life.
And it's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I really reflect on a lot is that who are you? So your true identity that you must define, and not who someone else told you to be or who the world said you are to be. And seems like you were grappling with that because, like you just said, you had this person that was always there. So you had your identity that was really, like you said earlier, you were joined at the hip. So you didn't really see yourself different from them yet. So it sounds like to me when your father passed, this was your cold water being thrown in your face to wake you up to say, wait a minute, you're Alyssa. And now you need to find out who Alyssa is and what Alyssa is going to do going forward. That's what I'm hearing from you. And so then you come back and you have this experience that says, I'm going to write a book and help others. And so what was the meaning behind this book? So it sounds like to me, when you came back and you said, I'm going to write a book, what was the purpose what did you want a reader to get out of the book?
Yeah, well, I think like many other people who decide to write a book, we think we're writing it for other people. And then it really turns out to be a whole healing journey in itself. And as we're sort of giving ourselves the medicine that we're hoping to give other people. And so I was very particular when I started this book, like that I don't want this to be a self-help book. This isn't a memoir. I don't have any answers to give. I've always been like, I am not a teacher. I am not someone who's going to stand on stage and give people steps of how to heal or how to get better. And I've been in the industry of that for a very long time, and it's never felt good. It always has to be done in a very particular. And so anyway, I was trying to find a unique way to do it. And as I was writing, I had such a magical experience with the writing and with the characters that I started fictionalizing it. So I wrote the first draft very raw, and then went back through several times and fictionalized it. And finally changed up the characters' names and fictionalized and just added a whole lot of magic in. So it really transported people into an experience where they felt like they're Scarlet. And they're identifying so much with all of the complexities of her grief that they see themselves, they see their stories. So my intention was to create a catalyst for their own healing journey, so they can walk through all of the different dynamics of grief themselves and start to reflect on it and heal it.
And I love the way that you are giving this as a resource. I see it more of that, or because it's really speaking to your story, but because everybody processes grief differently. And so that's what needs to be clear, because I really cringe when I hear someone who says, oh, they should have gotten over that by now. I've moved on, so they should have too. But everybody processes grief differently. And so as we go through this, the alchemy of the beast is really about, is the beast grief?
Death.
Okay.
Essentially. Death. So, yeah, I know it's hard to, because I want to just share all of it, but it's hard not to give too much of it away. But
but no, I just want to say, but the beast is grief, and we can leave it at that. And I can totally relate that the beast is humongous, and you have to really be willing to face it in your own strength and light, and not someone else's light, but you're giving them your walk that occurred, which is good. And they might see some similarities.
Yeah, and it's an honest walk, I like I said at the time I had just started college and was falling in love with all of my multicultural studies and just like learning that there were other religions out in the world other than what I had been taught. So I was unraveling. I was in this place of unraveling sort of these giant pillars of my existence and trying to figure out in that department too, who am I without all of these things that other people have taught me and tried to make of me, and then I lost another pillar, and so it was this constant unlearning of those things so that you had a clean slate to kind of move forward. And I had someone alongside me who was kind of going through the same thing, and my sister, and we were like transitioning out of this home religion together, and then we lost my dad. And so then all of these statements come in, like, oh, Jesus took him early and he's with the angels now. All these things that they did not resonate with me, and they frustrated me so much. And I was just like, I'm not here. And I had this mirror of watching my sister kind of go back to those things because she found comfort in them, and some people do. But I was just like, I was at the point of no return. I can't go backwards, so I have to go forward. But that's a whole terrain of uncertainty that I just have no idea how to navigate, So my intention with Scarlet was to stand as this sometimes reckless, but often very tenacious example of, no, we're going to brave the uncertainty because what we've been doing hasn't been working. And so we're going to find different ways to figure this out going forward. And that's ever evolving in life. Like you said, that statement around, oh, they're not over that yet. It's been almost 10 years for me now. This was about 10 years ago. And I just had this experience. I was moving, and I have this whole section of my closet that's my dad's sweaters. And I was like, okay, what's the most efficient way? We're downsizing, and I'm wrapping them. I'm putting them into a suitcase. I'm like rolling them all up, sniffing them just to see. But no, they just smell like dust. We always do that. They just smell like dust. And I'm like, okay, I'm wrapping them up, and they're not fitting. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a pile for my brother-in-law because I know that it will fill his heart so much to get some of these. And so I'm like putting 5 sweaters in, and then over the period of an hour, going back and taking them out of the pile for him and folding them up and putting them in the suitcase. And I just broke down sobbing because I had this moment of like, how many years is it going to take? How many things of his, how many pieces of him do I feel like I need to hold on to so that I know that he's still with me, No,
and I totally can relate to that. I mean, my brother, he committed suicide, and it's probably been 10 years. I'm bad with time. I don't know, but it's probably been close to 10 years. And I still have had pieces of him around my house too. I mean, I still have his ID because I just want to be able to see his handwriting. I mean, I have pictures of him in my house. And like you said, you always are clinging to things that were a part of that loved one that you just won't let go. I mean, it's right here by my desk. I pull it out and I have his wallet with his things in it. I mean, I can't use them and no one else can either, but I'm just not willing to throw them away. But, you raise an interesting point that I would like to go back and touch upon. You had to change, it seems to me, a perspective of or belief as you were going through your process. What was the hardest to change?
I have a moment to share with you to answer that. So
That's okay. That's okay. I like it.
Yeah, because my sister Amanda, and she had like braved this journey before me around the sort of spiritual crisis and unraveling of the old beliefs to build ones that are more true for ourselves. And so she was a confidant during that time, and I had showed up at her house just crying one night. I think I was around like 19 years old, showed up there, and I was just like, wait, but this and everything I knew and the answers I thought I had. And she just like stopped me and said, hey, so what if there is no answer? What if there's no answer? And I had just read a quote recently that said something along the lines of like, our need for like our peace doesn't come from having the answers. That just feeds our control. Yes. Those two are correlated, and so that was the beginning of my journey with uncertainty. That was the beginning of my unraveling down to ground zero. Okay, what if there's not this holy sacred answer around the globe that everyone knows and I can't figure out for myself? What if, and that's why I've kind of carried that theme into my work as a writer. Like my goal here is not to give people answers. It's to give them safety. It's to give them compassion, empathy along the journey, because it's ever evolving, especially the conversation around grief. This is not something you're going to wake up one day whole and healed and you're never going to be sad about it again. That's just it's not reality. I have 364 days out of the year that I can talk about my dad and the presence that he was on this earth and his power, and do it with such happiness for the life he lived and be at peace with the time that he exited the earth. And it'll still hit me every once in a while. I'll still have that one day a year where I'm consumed by grief around it. They can coexist, healing and grieving.
I like that. And because in your bio, you have a statement here, which I think speaks to what we just talked about. You said, during your journey, you unearthed some deeper truths behind the thing we call the human experience. So what were those deeper truths?
Got to read the books to find out. you gotta go along with Scarlett to find them out. So I will tell you, one of the Dan Millman, one of his books that really inspired me was The Laws of Spirit. And he I think, did you read it?
I did read it. I wanted to tell you that. I finished it. Yeah, that was a very wonderful book. And
so powerful. Short, sweet, powerful fable. Walks into the forest with a sage and walks through the law of balance, the law of choices, the law of harmony. And so it's an interesting take on the sort of laws that govern our human existence that maybe we're not aware of. And once we start tapping into those, we start unearthing these deeper truths inside of ourselves. And we start asking ourselves the questions around our meaning here and how much of that is within our choice and our power, and how much of it's maybe written in the stars,
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I totally agree. And we're segueing here a little bit, because one of the laws that really stuck out the most to me, which I think is kind of apropos here to our discussion, was the law of choice. Because I love what he's said in the book when the sage says, we're talking about his marriage, and she says, just go home and get a divorce. And he says, but I can't, because I have to. And he says, but then she says, then it's not a choice anymore. Have to is not, takes away choice. You have to be willing to accept whatever consequences occur, but know that you have a choice to make, that you can make, and it's not based on what someone else says, but really what you can accept and move on. So that really resonated most with me, because again, it goes back to what you're saying here about grieving. It's your choice how long you will be in this process, but you have to also make the choice of when you can move forward. And that's kind of what I heard when we first started here, is that you took that journey or out of the country because you had made a choice that it's time for me to do something in order to move forward. And that's the whole point that we have to understand is that that individual, whoever is in this situation, the choice is always theirs, right?
It's a hard pill to swallow. It's really easy. It's really easy to kind of skate through certain things in life when you attribute that lack of choice to some other force in the universe. But when you take that power back to yourself, I'm in the trenches wrestling with this law right now because the first book was attuned to the law of presence. There's a lot of here and now in that sort of grounding lesson in theme in the first book, and the second book's all about the law.
Yes, I
The
like
second book
that.
is all about the law of choice, and I tuned
Oh,
into that
really?
one. It
Well, I
is,
can't
I
wait to
know
read that
you.
book. But law of presence is powerful too because we get stuck so much in the. I think I was reading somewhere, and don't quote me on the statistics. I think we spend 60% of our time in the past, and only maybe 10 or 15% in the now, and the other is in the future. So, and neither one of those, we're spending only a small portion of our time in the present, which is what we can control right now because we can't control the past. We can't go back and do over, and we can't predict what's going to happen to us in the future. All we can do is take the action that we need to do today. And, and I think that Joyce Meyer says it best. She says, what's the most important time in your life? And she says it's right now. And that is so true. So let's move on to someone that's in this situation right now who's grieving, who's going through a process, and they don't yet have your book. And we know based on this conversation, they're going to get your book because they want to resonate with Scarlett and see how she's going to continue to heal and go through her journey to see how it resonates with them and possibly what they need to do because it might spark some thought on what they need to do for themselves. Like you're saying, it's not you telling them what to do. It's just you sharing your story that might spark something in them. So what do you wish that that person who's listening right now could see that they might not see yet?
That's a great question, to which I would respond with ready is a choice. And it's very rare that we feel like we're ready for the next steps or for whatever is next or for the uncertainty that we know is required to get to a place in our journey that we want to be. And so we really have to kind of ground ourselves in that now and make that choice for ourselves. I am choosing to be ready for, like it's a mental thing before it's actually a physical action.
Right. Totally agree. So you have to say when it's time. However, what I caution on is that you don't get stuck in waiting for the perfect time because there will never be a perfect time. You have to be willing to take that risk to just say, today is the day that I take one small step. If it's just me walking around the block and coming back into my house, and then tomorrow I walk 2 more blocks. But it's just those incremental steps that we have to be willing to take and not think about, well, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to meet 5 people. That could be really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to get my whole to-do list done one day. Yeah. It's pretty overwhelming.
Right? But instead it's just, I am a big proponent of just that small thing. And okay, so let me ask you this. And I never was one that say I want to go back, but if you could go back to yourself and have helped yourself, what is something that you might have said differently to help you along a little bit sooner? Or do you think it had to be sooner? So I want you to just tell me your thoughts on this because everything is a process and I totally believe that.
Yeah. Well, there was this real gem that came to me along the journey through my brother, and I put this in the book, and I formatted it specifically this way so that the question was posed at the beginning of the book, and it was answered at the end of the book. And at the
So you have to read the whole book to get the
you gotta
answer.
read the whole
I like
book.
that.
I'll give you a little spoiler because this was a super deep one that reached me in my grief. Like I said, a lot of people said a lot of different things to me while I was grieving, and I just wanted to punch all of them in the face because none of it resonated with me, and I was so full of confusion and anger. And I remember sitting because my brother took the route of science. He became a scientist, and so he had sort of unraveled everything that we all grew up with in the home first, and taken that route. And so he and I were kind of parallel along this journey of like, well, what we've learned to cope with this and reason with death and the afterlife and everything before, it doesn't resonate anymore. So what else is there? And I remember laying in the crevice of my dad's shape that was still in the bed a few days after he passed. And my brother was sitting at the edge of the bed. And I said, religion aside, concept of thought aside, what do you happens to the human essence, to the soul after death? And I don't know if you conceptualize asking a scientist that before.
Well, I would like to hear what he said. I'm sure it's going to be someone go, okay.
I posed that at the beginning of the book, and at the end, I flash back to his response, and he said, kid, what I do know is that Dad's actual DNA lives on in us, his mannerisms, his generosity, everything that was modeled for us, everything that he spent all those years investing in us, like he is actually living inside of us in our blood. And so he lives on. Those things live on. And that just felt like water to the desert that was my soul at that time. It was like the one thing that sat in that I could latch onto and use to create meaning in my everyday life going forward. That was tangible for me. That was what I do and who I am in the world going forward matters. And it's influenced by all of the things that he left with us.
So it sounds like to me, that's what resonates the most that could help someone is thinking about your loved one might have passed away, but their DNA lives on within you. And that's something you can be able to help someone in that process. And I see that, it's funny that you would say that, because sometimes when I am talking, I feel like it's my brother talking. And I'll have to go, but this is Hasina. And I know it is, but it's just the fact that I feel his presence at different times when I'm having conversations. And I take it as more of a comfort, but it's an out of body experience, because that just lets me know that he's with me and he's never left me, just like you just said there. And we can't take that as, oh, no, you can't even have those kind of thoughts, because who's to say what's the right thought and what's not? Long as a wrong thought is not saying I'm going to go and kill someone. So let me just clarify that, because I'm speaking about, the spiritual aspect of things here of what's right and wrong. But we have to be comfortable with accepting we believe when there's evidence that supports it versus, allowing someone else to say, why would you think that? Well, and I have to counter with that. Why wouldn't I think that? What evidence do you have that it's not true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have quite a funny example of that, because I have a dear friend of mine who she lost a baby. And so her grieving process had its own complexities. But she had a very auditory experience after this happened. She swore she heard her baby's voice all the time, and she was talking to her all the time. And she had asked me, like, do you ever hear your dad's voice? I was like, I hear my dad's voice every day, yelling at me every day to go unplug the iron, to make sure my keys aren't still in the door, to make sure my gas tank is full. Like those things. What he always said, my voice will be the last voice you ever hear. And it sure is, And so like those people live on in our memories. They live on in all the ways they weaved us into who we are. And, it's a beautiful thing once we realize it, and once we start seeing them show up in who we're being here. And I think it's a testament to who they were too. Like we all have our strengths and we all have our shadows, but like I want to be remembered for the things that made me unique and the ways that I impacted the lives around me. And so when we can reflect on someone's existence here and take those things from it and help and keep them alive in the way that we choose to be here on this earth, that's magic to me.
I know. Let's segue a little bit about the writing process, because I'm sure there's a lot of writers that are listening to us here today. What is your process for writing? Because everybody has a different process, so there is no right or wrong answer. So when do you what is your process for writing your books?
Well, these books in particular, this whole series is magical realism. So every book is based heavily on my own experience. So it's got my bones in there. It's got my actual life experiences there. So I always write it raw the first time. I write the whole manuscript as raw as it can get the first time. And there is a very potent healing quality to doing that because you're getting very honest with yourself about how the actual story's played out, right? Because things get kind of twisted up here over time. So when we go back and we write and we reflect and I make sure to have a safe space doing this. I write my books with my sister through Save by Story, and we have a retreat-based model and a community-based model. So we do little core cohorts that meet. We do 4 retreats in person a year, and then we have a virtual retreat every month so that we have a nice, safe space to actually like cradle the process that we go through because writing is such an intimate process. And like I said, you get real honest with yourself. You sometimes, when people are writing their own stories, they touch old pain points and they have weird things start happening in their lives and the people around them start channeling their characters and all these interesting things start happening. So you need like a safe group of people to process those things with. So those are 2 really big elements. The retreat-based part so that we can kind of get out of our normal lives, even if it's for 72 hours, just meeting online, and just making sure you have like a strong backbone of community. But as far as the creative process goes, I write it raw the first time. I go back and I fictionalize everything. I go back again, it's a million drafts. You have points in the process where you finally like a little detachment happens with the characters when you give them their special names. You give them their own names outside of what they were in your life, and so that's a little bit about my process. It's very different for everyone, and it's different depending on the work too. I started a fantasy series, and that is not based on my own experience consciously at all, right? If my stuff's seeping in there, which it probably is, it's not at the forefront of my intention in writing. And so that one's coming to me in a completely different manner. That one I saw the map first, and then then I started seeing the characters, and then the characters started talking to me in my sleep, and I'd wake up and I'd write their conversations, and I'm like, I don't even know what the whole story arc of this world is yet, but the world is starting to come together and build itself. So every project has its own essence. It has its own soul, and I think part of the creative process is learning how to communicate with it, learning what wants to come through, learning what type of space you need to give yourself for it to start to come alive for you.
I like the way you put that. It sounds like, because sometimes we think we have to go chapter by chapter and it has to be in sequential order and it has to be all organized. But you might have a story that comes to you just like what you said, and you just will write it out and you'll find a way to get that inside the book. I think as writers, we need to be flexible to allow whatever flows to come on out. And then you can go back, like you said before, and connect it all together. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
Because then you pigeonhole yourself. So I have a question for you, 2 questions more. And you kind of have answered it, but I want you to solidify it. How would you complete this sentence? I used to believe blank, but now I know blank. So you used to believe this but I always go, there's a knowing, but now you know what? What do you know? Because I'm sure there was some changes, right?
Yeah. I would say that I used to believe that the answers were out there to find. And now I believe that the answers are in here to create.
Expand upon that a little bit more for someone. I love what you're saying. But expand upon that.
Well, there's this beautiful part, the really big element. I did my degree in sociocultural anthropology. I love traveling. I love immersing myself in other cultures and learning about their traditions and belief systems. And so this was a huge part of my like meaning seeking journey, right? Taking myself out of my ordinary and putting myself in very uncertain situations to learn about other people and other ways of life and other mindsets. And that propelled me on this like traveling around the globe to find purpose, to find answers that were out there and waiting. And what I'm hoping to infuse into my writing is the empowerment that our brains and our bodies and our souls are so powerful. And we have so much choice. We have so much will. We have so much say over the things that we create in our life for ourselves. And it's a tragedy to me that people get very lost in trying to find answers outside themselves, when we realize that when we take all of that energy back to ourselves, like we have the ability to create those things for ourselves. We have the ability to create magic and to create meaning in our lives and to create who we want to be to make a difference with the people that we interact with in our time here on Earth.
I like that. So what words of advice and wisdom would you share with an author who is grappling with writing their story? And it's like you just said before, it's not so much writing for others, it's really writing for yourself, because this could be a process for you. What would you tell someone that's sitting here trying to move forward and take that first step to writing?
Oh gosh, I think the biggest priority I would say is to create safety for yourself. And however that may look, everyone's lives are different and usually very busy and consumed with, obligations for work and for other people. And it's a very difficult thing to do, but I would say to create enough safe space so that you can get intimate and honest with your own story, so that you can process the things that need to be processed and learn how to move through them and alchemize them into something that you can be proud of and something that you can share with other people.
I love it. So we've had a good conversation here. We went from, why you wrote your book, what was the perspective and changes that you underwent. Is there something that I did not cover that you want to leave?
No, I think we hopped around a few different worlds in 40 minutes.
So tell everyone the name of your book again, where they can find it. And so we want them to get this valuable book, because I think it's going to be very useful for someone who's going through.
I hope so. I hope it'll do just that and catalyze a nice, safe space for people to brave the parts of their own journey that they're ready to. It's called The Alchemy of the Beast. It's on Amazon, and you can watch a few book trailers and read more about it at lionheartcreations.org.
Lionheartcreations.org. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa, for having this conversation with me today. It was very enlightening, and you've opened up my eyes to a couple of different perspectives as well. And that's what it's all about. How can we change our view? Because we can get stuck seeing things one way, but we really need to open our minds to seeing from a different perspective. Because when we do that, we open up doors that we thought to be closed, that were really was where we needed to go and go through to keep moving forward to where we need to be. Because I'm a firm believer that and to be does not ever end. It's constantly evolving. Like you said before about when I asked you that question, you said it's the destination is never reached. So I thank you for your time today, and I look forward to the next time that we chat.
Thank you so much, Hasina. It was such a great conversation.
That's all for this episode of Change Your View. May this conversation help you weather life's storms and break free from the pause holding you back. Reclaim your path and refuse to be sidelined by anyone. For more inspiring and eye-opening discussions, visit hsjackson.com. Stop living in others' shadows or letting outside voices dictate your path. Think for yourself. Your perspective matters. Embrace a better mindset and unleash your full potential. Thank you for listening. Until next time.